full fanciness this is, no?
This is the dream, I would say.
Yeah.
Whoever made this read my mind and made things come true. Okay. No more do I have to like struggle with a USB webcam going into a computer, IP camera, Android phone, none of that shit. Like, no
Damn good.
OBS hack of getting on Google Meets and recording two of us in like cropped versions and then trying to pass it off as high quality video. Screw it. These
Damn
guys
good.
got it right. This is like, I'll record locally. I'll ship a fucking weird bandwidth thing so that you guys can talk and do your thing. And then when everything is done, we will put it all together in one place. Then you edit. Yeah. But they threw in a lot of fanciness, which I really appreciate them for. Like, it's got transcripts. Uh, so, like, remember I was telling you could just copy paste quotes and like make social media posts out of it. They took it a step
Love.
further. So in your transcripts, it also selects like ums and ers and ahs. So that shows up. You can select that word and delete it. It'll delete the audio and video also for that part.
Damn good.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, we can talk about Riverside's features all day, but like, let's get started with this. What's been up? How's things been? What are we
I
doing?
was just sitting and thinking, the last time we podcasted, I was in Ahmedabad, right? That was the last time, right?
No, you were back in Bangalore.
Huh?
But you
We did one
was,
in Bangalore?
yeah, we did. I think you were in Jakkur. We did one. You still hadn't found a place. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just
Oh, so
renewed the lease.
you were homeless. You were unemployed.
Oh, wow. It's literally been more than a year
Mm.
because I just renewed the agreement for this place.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely been like a year.
Mm.
And that speaks to, like, in my mind, it just speaks to consistency, right? Like, it's such a hard,
It's so difficult. Yeah, it's like
yeah.
everyone else, like every uncle on our WhatsApp group will come and say, "Better just be consistent. Just Rose show up every day." Okay, Paul Graham, we will show up every day. Like like,
No, but it's so true, right? Like, it's such a hard thing to do. Just
yeah,
like show up every day for that same.
yeah. It's so funny. The more I've been thinking about it, the more I feel like
Hmm.
artists have always been leading this entrepreneurial life.
Mhm.
uh, except their outcomes has never been like money, right? Like that's not been their like final aim. Because, and I'll tell you why I'm pointing this out. I've been watching this Haggerty, this Jason Camisa's show. If you're into Top Gear, this is a great replacement. Uh,
Correct.
like incredible replacement, right? Like they couldn't have gotten it right better. So he keeps pointing out that Porsche is not in the business to make 911s. They're in the they're in business to make money.
Hmm.
And he keeps pointing it out every time like creativity trips in some company or some car or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, that's so right? Like artists will always say artists I'm using as a broad term. Like I mean I include all creators in that
Hmm.
uh, thing, right? Like including programmers and devs and all of that. Like they are also artists in my eyes. Uh, like it's just such a thing, right? Like our outcome is always I want to make something nice, I want to make something useful, I want to make something beautiful. Like those are the outcomes, and then corporate takes over at some point when they're like, there is value in this. Let us create value for our shareholders, right? Like they bring in the shareholders, the investors, and after that, after that whole Silicon Valley joke is like it just rings true, right? Like the product is the share. There's no product anymore. There's no service anymore. There's no customer anymore. Nobody cares about that shit. Because once you've gone down this road, the share is the product. The stakeholder is the customer. That's who you want to make happy, right? Like, So yeah.
I feel really attacked, but I understand.
Why, bro? Why are you feeling attacked?
That's what I do for a living, right? Like I just chase people for increasing shareholder value
That's your
because I'm a
job.
shareholder.
Like there's a difference between being a shareholder because see that's the other thing, right? Like the economic loop that like we put in, and especially in India, especially today's climate, government's forcing you to invest. They don't want you to save money. Uh, like it or not, everybody on Reddit, like from India, is like thinking about investing, right? Then you have all sorts of people giving all sorts of advice, and the loop kind of like goes on, right? Like you go to a job where, like you said, your job is right now to give like help people become shareholders in some sense, and then the reason is like it's the same thing, right? You're earning money, you can't save it, just put it somewhere and leave it because inflation and like a whole bunch of other numbers that like tell you your money is worthless after a while. And then you have to invest, and then you're a shareholder in somebody else's product cycle, and yeah, and you're like, I don't care, just like make that percentage go up, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly. No, but
the,
the cool thing in my case is I am a shareholder in the companies that I work in. So,
hmm,
like when I ask someone to do something, I'm like, make me richer, right? Like it's it's literally like telling someone, hey, do this so that I can become
yeah,
more wealth.
yeah, and like, I've always had to have that mindset because no job, right? Whatever I do needs to make me money. Um, yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, but that's a great segue into this, right? Like another thing I was thinking was, there are so many goals that I set for myself,
Hmm.
and and like how do I spend my time effectively doing things that will contribute to those goals, right? So obviously the most important goal for me is like my mental health, to make sure that I don't lose my factor, that like everything
Yeah.
will happen. And then right after that is my physical health,
Hmm.
like getting up in the morning, going for a walk,
Hmm.
going to the gym, like all of those things. And then it comes to financial health, right? Like I've got a 10 to 6 which compensates me well, and I've got a partnership which compensates me well. But if I have to spend this time doing something right, it has to contribute to those goals, right? Like obviously it's great fun hanging out and talking and all that, but like what do we do with this, right? That's also something that goes on in my mind, saying that okay, I'm gonna spend my Saturday mornings for the next couple of days, you know. Oh, lost internet.
Always something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying,
Yeah, I was just talking about like how I'm so conscious of time now. Like
hmm,
I can literally feel time slipping away, right? Like it's been so fast. It's been a year, right?
yeah,
You moved to Goa, right? Like
yeah, yeah,
what and all has happened?
yeah. Like I moved to Goa, almost got a job, uh, quit that job, and yeah. Geez, I also made good amount of money in this 1 year, just like with this
Good for you.
experiment of a one-man show business. Yeah, and like so much learning. Like just the last 2 3 weeks. Uh, by the way, like yeah, I think Smokey is serious co-founder to Clean Design Company. Uh, he's still like working from a part-time perspective, but like the amount of insight and stuff he's been sharing been phenomenal. Like I'm so happy to like just have him. Like I don't know if you've been seeing my gratitude posts to community and like to co-founders and friends on LinkedIn. Uh,
I don't go to LinkedIn. It's a pain.
okay, yeah. No,
But
what I figured with all social media, I understand your like hesitation. What I figured with all social media is we're a critical mass of social media in general. Like 80% of people who are on any social media platform are most likely on every social media platform. A lot of cases they probably didn't even consent to it, different topic. But my whole point is it's like if your timeline looks horrible in any platform, that's because of the people you're following. So like if you put in the work to clean up the timeline, right, and follow the people you want to, and also like I think the one thing like I really noticed this when threads came out, right? I don't want to listen to Instagram people talk. I just do not, right?
Actually, this is very interesting. So I'm not on Threads.
Uh,
I'm contemplating getting off Instagram and Facebook.
okay.
Um, the only social media I actually want to have is like Twitter, right? And
Yeah.
I actually don't mind paying for it now. So that's a very interesting shift in my
I'm really
life.
trying to weigh out the benefits still.
Hmm.
I feel I feel payouts. I mean, I don't know what's going on with that Twitter Blue verified thing anymore. Like, cause what is he trying to compete? What is he trying to do? Like, I like no, like he
So
is
I'm not
like a
I'm not
clueless
getting.
project manager, right? This was like,
No. So I'm not getting into all of that, right? Like literally,
right.
uh,
Why do you want to pay for Twitter?
no, hold on. So we need to step back and introspect about this, right?
Oh, right. About
So
this is about you. Yeah. This is not about
this is
Elon.
about, yeah,
Fuck Elon. Yeah.
it's not,
About
yeah.
Haji. Yeah.
So me as a young man with a lot of testosterone, Instagram was great, right? Like chicks with fat bums are like it's pretty much all of that, right? But like as I'm growing older, I'm not interested, right? Like I'm just it doesn't add any value. Pretty faces, good locations. Like that's what
This.
Instagram is, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of luxury settings and people with skimpy clothes and blah blah blah, right?
But not just
Summer
that. I
bods.
mean, like between you and me, we share a lot of cute dogs and cats pictures and videos as well, right? Like
Huh.
it's,
I mean, I get
I
that.
classify all that entertainment under like instant dopamine serotonin rush, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly,
it's just
exactly.
this like wipes all that like big booty bullshit like out and like puts like clean thoughts in your head, right? Like
No, but like you said, right? Like the people you follow, determines your feed,
yeah, yeah.
right? So I got a whole bunch of these gym rats. I've got a whole bunch of dancers. I've got a whole bunch of cat videos. Like all of that stuff, right? But generally, it's like not adding any value to me. I'd rather get a cat for myself. Like that's what I'm
Yeah.
getting. So like I just want to get off all these platforms, and I don't
Oh
want my
shit.
family members and friends to kind of follow
That
me
is
and
a
what.
great idea, Haji.
What.
If you stop watching reels, you have the time for a cat now.
Yeah, exactly. See, this is what I'm talking about. I'm literally now sitting and thinking, how am I spending my time? What is the best use of my time?
No, come on.
Instead of watching reels, can I play the guitar? Right? Like these are the kind of conversations I'm having with myself. And yeah, I mean, oh, just stuck. Okay, sure.
I am uh, running on my mobile internet now. There is no fan anymore.
You're
Okay.
really getting the complete Goa experience.
In this 1 hour today, like last week, no problems, no power cuts, nothing. This 1 hour, when Haji is free, is when like Goa wants to give me all its problems. All I want to do is a podcast with my bestie. Anyways, fuck it. Okay, social media sucks. You gotta clean up your
Well,
filter. Fine, cool. Let's talk about GitHub.
no, so I'm already like thinking about just getting off and just doing Twitter because I'm more interested in hearing what people have to say rather than what people are
No, I think Twitter's community is really mature and advanced, and like it really does hold a candle to what Jack always wanted Twitter to be, or what he presumed Twitter would become, and finally it did, which is like the democratization of the town square. I want to go into the whole free speech thing.
yeah.
I want to talk about like what about the Nazis that are on Twitter. All I'm saying is of all the Twitter clones that exist, Twitter is still reigning champion when it comes to finding good people and finding good conversation. And if you want to drown yourself
Yeah,
in politics and hate and go on a internet angry, ranty, I want to fight with people on the internet spree, that's up to you. That's totally you're welcome to do that. Like, it's no one stopping you, right?
yeah.
Like, but
And
don't call the
talking about Faisal
platform.
Shashi's on his way here.
Yeah, enjoy. It's like he's moved on from UPI policy issues to AI procurement issues, and it's so interesting to get his perspective on things, right? Like,
Mhm.
but I don't know, dude. Like at 35, we can't still be fighting the man. Although in a lot of sense, we've embodied the man, right? Like, the kids are fighting us, right? Like, fuck you, you guys fuck shit up. And we can't be
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
no, it was the man, because they're just like, we're the man now, okay? Like, pick up the reins and fix stuff, right? Like, stop complaining. Uh, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's fun time.
Right.
India sent
You wanted to
something to
talk
the
about
moon
Git,
again.
no?
Yeah, we could talk about
Chandraayan.
that, or we could talk about Chandraayan.
We can talk about both.
Okay.
Why did you want to talk about Chandraayan?
I don't know, dude. It was both very fascinating and also not. This time, for some reason, it's always been like this fanboy of ISRO only in their like tech related stuff. There's a lot underneath the ISRO hood. A lot of dead raccoons and squirrels that I don't want to prod. But like, the launch looked epic actually. Like, did you catch a video of it? Like, it looked
Yeah, I
really
did, I
cool.
did.
Like, it like went through that cloud and the cloud glue, and it was like really cool. Uh, I have no idea what it's going to do out there. I have not read into it. Is this a moon mission? They're sending it to the moon as a satellite to the moon, or they're
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
land something on the moon?
I don't
Satellite.
think. I think they're trying. Yeah, they're going to try and land something. Yeah, land something.
Fascinating. I'm also
So
glad
Chandrayaan
that
one
this.
tried to do that, right? Like it crashed into the moon.
Oh, okay. You do know there are two private players in India doing space stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, one is the Team Indus. I feel really bad for them because they've been running around red tape and bureaucracy. But it was so cool to see these 20 somethings have actually raised money and attracted the top talent, right? Like, you have 60-year-old like quadruple PhDs in astro whatevers, like, jump ship and join this company to help them build that rover, and it's incredible what a great idea can do, right? Like, just attract all those people, funnel them all into, like, come, let's do this amazing thing. um, yeah, I think that's more fascinating to me about Chandrayaan, and the potential that it holds for others in India who are working in this space. And I guess it all starts with GitHub, right? Like,
Mm.
no GitHub, no Chandrayaan.
Yeah, you're actually true. A lot of this is software automation, right?
Mm.
Um, and the most basic thing is how do you kind of version control your code? Because ultimately, code is just you're translating natural language into a formal language, right?
Hmm.
So your thoughts evolve over time, and you need to be able to retain that context of what you thought at certain points in time, what changed, to really appreciate uh, the system that you're putting together.
Yeah.
Ultimately, to someone like me, it's all about process, right? Do this first, then do this, then do that, and then wait for this, and then do that. You know, coding is essentially your encoding process at the end of the day.
Hmm.
So, you know, it's a fascinating tool that allows you to introspect the changes in process over time, responding to environment variables, and all of that, right?
That's
But yeah,
crazy. Can I tell you what my perspective
and
of
I, and
GitHub
I,
is?
and actually it, yeah, of course, go.
No, you finish your thought. I think you were like going to drop some value bomb there.
Yeah, so the most amazing thing about something like GitHub or Git is that it allows multiple people to collaborate asynchronously, right? Of course, like Google Docs has taken it to the next level, but this is something that allows you to really, really collaborate with people and bring your thoughts together, right? And that is where value gets unlocked. When I share my thoughts with you immutably, and you are making suggestions on top of my thoughts, you are trying to change my thoughts, influence me in certain ways, and that's the outcome that you get out of it, right? Like high quality software. I think you and me were talking about it the other day when we were saying that open source software can never be defeated by closed source software, right? Just the percentage of people who look at your thoughts and review it and give you feedback and ideas is an order of magnitude different, right? Like
Hmm.
any private company IP is not going to be at the same level of quality that open source gets to, and the fundamental enabler for all of this has been version control.
Hmm. Crazy. It's spectacular because to me GitHub is, it feels like, or like this was my perspective of it for the longest time, that it's a library of code, right? Like it's the Alexandria library of like all human knowledge in some sense put into one place, and it it allows you to not only learn about like how some things were set up and built, but also immediately utilize it to push it forward, like take add the next page to the library, in some sense. uh,
Mm.
yeah, like even yesterday Ashish and I were talking, um, and I was actually telling him I'm doing this podcast today. I know you're gonna like show me around how to use Git and stuff. And of course, like what I want to do with it is probably needs a lot more than just understanding Git. But I think that's a great start point. And also the other parallel I wanted to, like the whole idea of like this place where you can put your idea expression, this piece of code down that you have used somewhere, right? Like, and you're saying you use it if you want to, you optimize it and share it back with me. Like, there's so many endless possibilities over there. Like, and I feel like
Yeah.
the parallel, I always draw a parallel to like the art world, right? Like, there's no open source art, right? And I keep thinking about that. Why do we not like just upload our like art? Okay, very simple, basic Ableton stems of music of the track that we created, or like why don't we like just like to encourage collaboration? I was like, I I think it's because the outcomes are so widely different. Like with software.
So here's some different perspective, right?
Hmm.
Here's a different perspective. And I think this is where probably we should have had Ajay over here, right? I think the fundamental thing that enabled a lot of code sharing was the licensing around it, right? All of
Hmm.
these repositories would contain licenses which indicate how you can use this material, right? The GNU license, the MIT license.
Hmm.
There's a legal aspect to this also, right? Like, I think if you solve that problem for the art world, saying that, hey, this is how you can use this, um, that really, really changes the game, right? Because one
Yeah,
is, of
so
course, how do you enable collaboration? How do you enable distribution? But also, how do you make sure that it is respectful and it gives credit to the people who done the hard work.
nah, yeah, I really think it's because the like with software, the outcome is so binary almost, right? Like this piece of code does this. If it doesn't do that, then it's useless piece of code, right? Like in some sense. With art, it's not like that. It's so subjective, right? Like I make a painting which is blue and yellow and green, and like I say, this is anger. Nobody can question that. Like, even though it seems counterintuitive. And if I make like this black and red and like orange painting and say this is happiness.
No, but if I were to kind of intellectually spar with you, right, I could also say
Yeah.
that, how you apply that code to a real world problem determines the value it creates, right?
No, we're not talking about value at all. We're not talking about the intended value.
Hmm.
We're talking about like
Hmm.
like just because a button, like say the code for a button, right? Like if what does a code for a button contain? Tell me that.
It just describes how the button should behave.
And looks in
Yeah,
different states.
or
Yeah,
it describes the button. Yeah.
button, right? And probably has
Hmm.
you can set your input here and you can set your output here, right? Like when the button click is the input and button, yeah, what do you say? Once it's clicked, it does something else. That's added functionality around the button, right? Uh,
Hmm.
it's so straightforward. Where do I use that button? That's up to me. That's true. But like, can somebody else come and say, hey, you've written like 80 lines of code for this button is completely useless. Here's like a 8-line code that solves the same thing, and that optimizes it because 8 lines of code runs
Yeah, that,
faster
that
on it, right? Like the objective was
yeah.
let's code a button, and you coded a button, sure. As somebody else came and said, hey, this is the same button but just better, that essentially makes that code better. There's no questioning. There's no like, no, I prefer my 80 lines of code because it runs slower. Like it just doesn't make any sense there. Uh, right? Like that's what I
Yeah.
mean by
So what you
the
what you're trying to
outcomes
say is
are
that, one thing is well defined.
like I remember this conversation of ours where you said, why don't you start writing a novel on Git? Where you open it out to other people to come collaborate with you and like branch off their own stories from it and
Hmm.
things. I really thought about it, and
Hmm. Hmm.
and here's what I came up with, right? And this was all assumption. I didn't do the experiment. I just like real assumption. I was like, people would rather just start their own story and arrive at a, oh my god, this is the same thing as Othello after they finished writing it, because because there's no like end outcome to a creative thing, right? Like if it is, it's design. It's no more art in some sense, right? Like if you're building something out of for it to be purposeful, then that's an artifact. It's not art. If you are like making something just to express how you feel, that's probably more art. And if you're making music to sell, that's a commodity. That's no more like, again, like there's these this really blurry line between like, and especially when you immerse art in capitalism, this is what happens, I feel, right? Like it confuses it like a lot more. Like you don't know what it is anymore, and you don't know what its purpose is anymore, and like comes back to that same statement: are you making something because you want to make something, or are you making something to make money, right? uh, with code, I think it's a lot more direct. I think that's why open source thrives, because everyone joins hands with we will all make the best browser that is not Google's browser, and they built Mozilla, and then like 20 years later they don't know what to do with it, right? That's like, but they did. They built an amazing browser, and like it was free, and like it had a lot of privacy and security issues that, and wasn't like stealing all your data to serve you better ads. They did. It was, and it's quite like for a long period of time it was better than the Google browser, right? And it reaffirms the point you're making about open source being community contribution to making better things, right? Like, man, I wish we could do that with like hardware stuff also, right? Like I wish all the engineers of Sony, Samsung, and Huawei, and like all of them could like get together and build a better TV, right? Like which is open source and like cheap to make and like repairable and like all of that, instead of these black boxed. I don't know what is inside this and like who has put what code to lock what things up and like like you and I struggle to get the audio jack working off my TV, right? Like, and like who knows what's going on in there, right? Like I don't know. Like I really like, I like Git from this whole thing, and I think, yeah. So you want to screen share and like jump in and like show me how to use it.
Oh God, I was not prepared to do that. Um,
Okay.
but I can kind of just give you a general sense of what it
Okay.
is, right?
How about I
Um,
screen share and you guide me?
so, sure.
Okay, you start, and then I have to log in still. I haven't even made a GitHub account. Yeah.
So, okay, let's start with the basics, right?
Okay.
So, Git and GitHub are two vastly different things, right?
Okay.
So, Git is the core version control tool, right? So
Okay.
you can run Git without GitHub. That's the
Okay.
important distinction to make, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is GitHub? GitHub is basically a very corporate-owned remote repository, right? Now, what is a remote repository? So, whenever
Hmm.
you use Git, you're operating on your local machine, right? So you have a local copy of it, right? Now, if you need to share it with someone, you need to push
Okay.
it to a remote repository where people can go and pull from. So you're pushing and
Hmm.
people are pulling, right?
Hmm.
Um, Now there are tools which you can download and you can host your own remote repository. All of that is
Hmm.
possible, right?
Hmm.
But GitHub became, for whatever reason, that place where everybody started pushing their code into, right?
Hmm.
And I think it's strategic in a sense to keep it largely free so that people can push code into it. So then you're kind of accumulating a lot of uh, you know, this kind of uh, capability, right?
Hmm.
So that's the first distinction to make. Now,
Okay.
what does GitHub do, right? It helps you, um, you know, visualize a lot of things, right?
Hmm.
So while the Git tool can, on the command line, show you the same information, uh, you know, having a nice, well-designed interface where you can visualize it really nicely, uh, and you appreciate this as a developer, as a designer, right? Like it just makes it easier to understand, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so this is the first thing. Now let's get into the specifics of Git, right? So Git basically contains a few primitive concepts,
Hmm.
right? So the most primitive concept in Git is a branch, right?
Okay.
A branch is nothing but uh, like a trail of breadcrumbs, right?
Hmm.
So you basically say, I started here and I'm, going in a certain path, uh, and this is the story of, the journey that I'm taking, right? Now, the interesting thing is you can have multiple branches.
Hmm.
The branches can, merge or diverge from each other, right? And that's how you achieve collaboration, right? So, for example, if I'm saying, let's use your example, right? Why can't we write a book on Git, right? Now, let's say we start with the master branch, right?
Mm.
You write the first paragraph and you push the paragraph to a remote repository. I pull
Mm.
from that remote repository.
Mm.
Now, I have the option of creating a branch from that master branch,
Mm.
adding my changes to it, right?
Mm.
And then I could make a pull request. We'll get into the details of it. Asking you, say, hey, can I merge this into your branch, right?
Mm.
So that becomes then a way for us to collaborate, right? And you can say, hey, I don't like your changes. Get lost, right? I can
Right.
discard your branch, right?
Right.
So, this is what makes it interesting, right? And if you create a branch
Mm.
which over a long period of time completely is divergent from the branch which you started with, then you can
Mm.
no longer merge it back, right?
Mm.
So even the software will say that, hey, I can't even attempt to do this, right? So if
Mm.
you started off writing a romantic novel and I turn it into a horror story on my
Yeah.
branch, uh, it just won't allow you to merge it, right? So these constraints, even though so beautiful,
Right.
it kind of keeps everybody in the same, general direction, right? With their
Mm.
own
Mm. Mm.
flavors added to it. Now, let's talk a little bit more technical, right? So you've got branches, which is clear. Now you need to understand commits, right?
Mm.
So let's say, you start off, you write that first paragraph, right? Now you want to add the second paragraph, right? So the version control comes in here. So
Mm.
you've got one commit, which contains the first paragraph, and now you've written the second paragraph, right? Now you have a choice whether you want to actually commit that second paragraph to your branch, right?
Mm.
You could say that, hey, I spent all this time thinking about para 2 and I wrote para 2, but I'm not happy with it, right? So you can just discard it right away, right?
Mm.
Without disturbing para 1, right? You could have made changes in para 1 in the process of writing para 2, and you can just
Mm.
discard the whole thing saying that, hey, this is not the right direction I was going. I don't care about this anymore, right? So commits are a big part of it. So you have a committed version of your novel, and then you have
Mm.
the the current working copy, and you
Got
could
it.
just easily discard it. You could stash it. You could do a whole bunch of things, and all
Mm.
of this makes it easier for you to put your ideas down, right? Typically, when
Mm.
we write using a Word or a notebook, right?
Mm.
It is very tedious for us to go back and change things, right? In physical form, whatever you do is extremely tedious.
Right.
But let's say you're editing a Word doc, right? If you wanted to
Okay.
refactor your work to express
Mm.
your ideas better,
Mm.
the only way you would have achieved it is you create a separate doc and copy paste things out from here to try and see whether you can get a better version of it, right? Because if you
Okay.
edit in place, you're going to lose that information, right? Now,
Right.
this is the beauty of Git, right? Because you have this committed copy and this working copy, uh, you can really, really pick apart your own idea in so many ways, right? In fact,
Mm.
let's say you go down this path and you feel at that point in time this looks good and you commit it, right? You can
Mm.
still go back and go to the first commit and say that, hey, I just didn't like this commit, right?
Mm.
So it empowers you to think and to aggressively refactor the things that you've done in the past, be very harsh and critical about your work, and it will preserve everything, right? Because the
Got it.
underlying data structure is immutable. So
Right.
you can just confidently attack your own work and just keep getting
Mm.
better and better and better, right? And you have to really appreciate these capabilities to use it, right? Like you were expressing how you just couldn't see the value of doing that, right?
Mm.
The value of doing it is exactly this. You can attack your own ideas. You can
Mm.
share your ideas with other people and allow them to enhance your ideas. If they become
Mm.
too divergent from your ideas, the tool itself will prevent them from merging back into your ideas. So your romance novel remains a romance novel, right?
Mm. But it
My
does
horror doesn't come
allow
into your side.
another author who wants to segue from a romance starting into a horror middle section to kind of branch off and continue writing, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So the what will end up happening is you have two branches which have nothing to do with each other and they can never be merged together.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
So in the same repository, you could have two completely different stories. So you just switch the branch and you get a completely different version, right? Like imagine
That's
how cool
insane.
it would be if you all agreed on a general principle, saying that we want
Hmm.
to write a story about two people, right?
Hmm.
And you have different branches with absolutely different stories, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, no. I
On
mean,
one branch,
yeah.
it could be that
I was just
hey,
thinking of the application in like fan fiction, right? Like especially like just like
hmm,
considering nobody likes the person who created Harry Potter anymore for various reasons, they could just spin off their own version of the story, right? And label it
absolutely.
fan fiction and be like, yeah, yeah, I don't like all the turfism that's going on in these stories, and here's I'm going to introduce all these characters and can have its own like flow, right? Like its own like storyline that timeline that follows its own like inclusive characteristics. Uh,
Hmm.
they're fascinating. I mean, I guess now let's talk about it from the perspective of code, right? Like this was a great analogy for somebody like me who's like totally non. I mean, I wouldn't, yeah, non-tech, more or less, to understand what Git is about. And let me recap before we continue, right? And I jump into the how actually the
Hmm.
code part of it works. Um, so basically, Git and GitHub are different. Git is a idea in some sense, and GitHub is a community which enables this idea, um, right? So
Hmm.
with Git, basically, it's a version control system where you can start creating something. It lets you
Hmm.
test, critique, change, and commit or not certain some of the things that you have built, and it also allows for collaboration. And I'm guessing you can block this collaboration. You can say no, nobody. This is a closed thing that I'm going to
Absolutely.
only for me, and
Yeah.
I'm going to be in this, looking at this for a while, and then much later, if I feel like I can open it up to people. And but even in that case, the idea is
Absolutely.
I start building something, I'm able to say, okay, fine. Let's talk about a web page for a second. Like I've started building. I like the background. I like the header that I've created. I want to test a few menu bars before I actually say, yeah, okay, cool, this is the one. So I branch off. I make different menu bars. I like, okay, I like menu bar 3 the most, so I commit menu bar three's branch to the main branch, and now you have the semblance of a web page starting, and goes on so forth. But like
Hmm.
2 years later, after the web page is built and like multiple CSS classes and so on and so forth, like dozens of pages being hosted, and I get fired, and a new developer comes in, he can literally sit down one day and like read all of the things that have happened and understand why
Yeah.
certain changes were made, why certain changes were not made. Also keep a track of all the things that were done but not used, and see if there's something there that he could find actually useful to solve a problem 2 years later, right? Like, um, yeah, I guess that's a nutshell. That's a good enough nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched upon something very interesting, right? Um, so one of the big things about GitHub is the ability to basically have a conversation around code, right?
Hmm.
So there's something called a pull
Hmm.
request, right?
Right.
So whenever I make changes on someone else's work and they have protected their branches, I basically have to create a pull request. asking them, hey, can you merge my changes into your code, right? Now, this is where I love GitHub, right? It is an active debate and conversation, right? People really, go after it, right? So you will see some arrogant people abusing other people, putting them down. You will see some smart politicians who are able to convince the person that this is the best way, and then you have some really honest conversation about why things are good. Like just reading the conversation around PRs is so enlightening, right? Like it is fascinating, and I found some really good Twitter people who I initially found on these, these conversation threads, right? Like there's this guy who I follow. He was involved in building one of these frameworks, JavaScript frameworks, and he talks mad shit in these PR requests, right? Like crazy
What's a PR
eccentric guy.
request? Pull request.
Uh, Pull request, yeah.
Okay.
So like he would come there and just be so flamboyant and talk some wild shit, and then I was like, this guy is so interesting. Let me follow him on Twitter, right? And I've just enjoyed following him on Twitter and just seeing the way he lives his life, and it's so amazing, right? And then and just looking at the debates, right? Like the way people are intellectually sparring, I think it has increased my IQ by a few percentage points, right? And I just absolutely love it. And this is the real value of GitHub, right? To be able to there's something called as issues, right? To even convince people that there's a problem, there's a user interface to say that, hey, this is a problem, and people debate, is it actually a problem or is it not a problem? And then once they
Right.
accept it's a problem, then there's a PR against it, saying that, okay, here's a
Right.
fix to solve this problem, right?
Right.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Okay. It's awesome. Cool. GitHub has finally logged me in. Let me sign up. He wanted me to check out some
Yeah.
GitHub
On that note,
repository
actually,
because the captcha wasn't working. Huh. Are you running late?
not running late.
Huh.
Shashi is going to show up any moment.
That's
So I wanted
okay.
to kind of
He can
have
intrude.
a check on
No
him.
worries. It's 11.
Okay, got it. If you don't mind, there you go.
No worries.
One
Yeah,
second.
yeah. Let him intrude. No problem. It's Shashi. We can ask him to sit quietly for a bit.
Hi! Welcome. Hello. We are in the middle of a podcast. Yeah. PK, who else? Hi, Bhuvia. Hi.
Hi. What's up,
Okay,
my Goa fam?
let me. His his internet is not great, so his camera's off.
Yeah. What's up? What's up? Yeah, I can see you. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Even though it's dark. Huh. Let's do this. Guys,
Okay,
10 minutes.
they can't hear you. Yeah.
You can hear me?
No. I can hear you, but I think generally we should kind of park this for next time.
Okay, cool. No worries. Sounds good. This is a great comeback to the PakodaProfit Podcast. And see you next week.
Absolutely.
All right. Take care, man.